Welcome everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this video we're going to talk very generally about how to use Photopea and how to create new things with Photopea. Now notice that once you log in, once you get to Photopea, excuse me, this screen will pop up and it will allow you to either open a document from your computer, use a free template, or create a new product or a new project. I'm going to click New Project. And it will present us with these options. Now, it'll give us some templates that we can use. I'm not going to select any of these templates. We want to name our project here, and I'm just going to name this example. And then we want to choose, do we want to sort by pixels or by inches? Now, this decision is based on how we're going to use this document. Is this a document that's going to be presented mainly online? Or is this a document that we're going to print? So if I'm making something for maybe game development, or maybe I'm making something for a website, then maybe I'll use pixels. But if I'm making like a flyer or a poster, then I'll use inches. For us, I'm just going to use inches for today, and it's going to be 11 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall, which is a piece of paper. The DPI, this is basically your dots per inch, or how the level of quality of the image itself. Now you may think, oh, I just want to make this as high as possible. Your file sizes are going to be super big. If you're printing something, you want your DPI to be at least 300, and I would set it to 300 for everything you're going to print. If it's for online, it's fine to keep it at 72. Background, we can choose a white background or a transparent background or a background. I don't know what that means, but I only always choose either white or transparent. I'm going to choose white for this. And I'm going to go ahead and click Create. So now notice that we have a document that we can manipulate. Up here we have some options. We have File, which will allow us to create a new document, open documents, save, all that stuff. Now, here's one thing that you want to pay attention to. Save as PSD will save this work as a Photoshop document, and then you can open it up in Photoshop if you want, right? Export as will allow you to export it as a final document, either a JPEG or a PNG or a PDF, whatever you need to export it as. Edit gives you basic edit options. Image will give you options for the image itself, so changing the canvas size, transforming it, things like that. And then we have layer. These are options specifically for the layer that you're on, and we're going to talk layers in just a minute. Then we have select, where you can do, if you make a selection, you have selection options that you can use. Filters will apply filters to your document. Like you can add a blur to it, or sharpen, or pixelate your document. Then we have view. You can zoom in and out. You can do all kinds of stuff from here. Then you have window, where you can set you can find windows that you want to apply or put into your workspace. For this, we're just going to leave this alone for now. That's pretty much all the options you have there. More, whatever. Let's talk about this toolbar here. This toolbar will hold all the tools that you can use in Photoshop. For example, I have the Move tool selected. Now, when I try to do anything, I get this thing that says this layer is locked. I'm going to go ahead and double click, or single click on the lock next to the layer there, so that when I click, I don't get that annoying message. Notice that when I have a tool selected, this menu up here changes. This menu will allow me, it is context sensitive, meaning if I select a different tool, I get different options. Each of these tools have specific options that we want to pay attention to, and those options are up here. So let's go through these tools specifically. This is my Move tool. Down here I have my Select tool, or my Rectangle Select. If I click and hold, I can see that I have Rectangle Select and Ellipse Select. So some of your tool options are going to be hidden behind a click and hold, and you can see which tools have those hidden options by looking at this little arrow. next to the icon. I have my lasso tool here. So I have a lasso select, polygonal lasso select, and magnetic lasso select. The two that we're going to use most often are lasso and polygonal lasso, and we'll learn those when we get into compositing. I have my object select tool, and if I hover over, I have magic wand, which is one we're going to use a lot. I have a crop tool here. I have an eyedropper. I have a spot healing brush. I have a regular brush with a pencil in there as well, and a color replacement brush, which is fun. I have a stamp tool. I have an eraser. I have a gradient tool, blur, sharpen, a text tool. I have a pen, which we can talk about later. The pen is fun to use. I have a path select tool, a shape tool. Down here I have color. I can choose what I want my foreground color to be and my background color to be. Right, so I can choose colors here. I can create a mask, which we're not going to really do yet. We'll get into that later. But those are all my tools. Now again, notice that I have my shape tool selected, and so I have some options up here for my shape tool. I can actually change my fill. I'm going to make it blue. I can add a stroke to it up here. Let's put a black 5-point stroke around it, and let's make it dotted. Okay, beautiful. And I'm just going to draw out my rectangle right there. Now notice that I have a blue fill. I have a black stroke, a dotted stroke, but it's actually pretty small. So I'm going to increase the stroke size so we can see those dots. So again, that's really how easy it is to create objects in Photoshop. Now notice that whenever I created that shape, something new popped up over here. This menu is not Photoshop, Photopea. This menu over here is our layers menu. Layers are incredibly important in Photopea. The way Photopea decides, how your objects look is by layering them. So think about this like if you've ever seen an old school teacher who uses one of those overhead projectors, right? You may have seen them, put down a piece of paper or a clear sheet of plastic, and it has some writing on it, and then they layered something else on top of it, another clear sheet with some different writing, and it actually made it look like they're together, they're the same, but they're not. They're two separate and distinct layers. That's how Photopea works. So if I grab this, I can move that around, and I can see that I'm not really affecting the background at all. Actually, let me make some changes to the background here. I'm going to fill that in. Where's my paint bucket tool? Is it under there? No. Where does my paint bucket belong? Where does it live? Interesting. Oh, there we go, under gradient. Okay, so my paint bucket tool, I am going to fill it in with, let's go this kind of grayish red. So I have my background, I have my paint bucket. When I click, now I have this grayish red background, which looks really gross. But I can move that background around because I have that layer selected. If I select the shape layer, I can move that around, and notice that they're not interacting with each other in any way. I'm not erasing parts of my background just by moving this around. And to make this a bit more explicit, let me grab my paintbrush tool here, and let's make the brush size a bit bigger, and I will pick this kind of weird paint stroke thing, and then let me change the color to something a bit more, stands out a bit more, yellow. We'll do yellow. Now notice layer is not editable. Okay, so if you get the layer is not editable thing, what you want to do is come over here to the layer itself, right click and click rasterize. We're going to talk about what rasterizing means in another lesson, but just know that if you try to click and then you get that message, layer is not editable, you want to come over here and click rasterize. Now it's an editable layer and I can do something with it. So I'm just going to basically paint over top of my shape here. Now, it looks like I'm painting on the background and on my shape, right? But I'm not. I'm actually only painting on the layer that shape exists on. So the background itself is still there and unedited, unchanged. And I can show you because I can turn off this eyeball, which turns off that layer, and you can see my background is not painted on. Okay, so that's how layers work in Photopea. So please understand the layer concept. It's really, really important. Okay, over here we have some effects, EFF. So these effects will apply to the layer itself. So if I click on EFF, I can do maybe an inner shadow, create an inner shadow layer on this layer. Let's improve. I don't really see much of a change happening here yet. Oh, I can see something. Something's happening. Let's increase the distance. Ooh, there we go. Ooh, that's gross. This isn't the best shape for a inner shadow. But that effect will apply to the layer and any layer below it. Over here, however, we have filters. Filters apply to the entire document itself. So if I come over here to filter and I click, let's say, Gaussian blur, that blur will apply to the entire document. Notice how my document is now much more blurry, right? So that'll apply to the whole document itself. All right, so now that, you know, my document looks like something that, you know, a 3-year-old may have put together, I'm going to cut this video now, and I will let you guys kind of play around with this platform. Photopea is pretty feature rich. It's obviously not as feature rich as Photoshop is, but again, it is a browser-based program, so you don't have to pay for it. It's free, and you won't have to install extra software on your computer. So, but they do essentially the same things. I'm going to let you play around in this, and then I will see you in the next video, which is going to be putting together our holiday card. Now, one thing I want to point out. In the next video, you may see me using Photoshop. Because Photopea and Photoshop are relatively the same, the lessons that I teach from now on will probably just be, for the next couple of weeks, I'll do Photopea separate lessons as well. I'm rethinking what I'm doing in my head. I'll do a Photopea separate lesson, a Photopea lesson for the holiday card, just so that you're more comfortable. But at some point, I'm going to stop doing Photopea lessons and focus primarily on Photoshop, because they're pretty close together. They're pretty close in terms of, you know, their interfaces and stuff. So just look out for that. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to stop rambling and let you guys get to work. Thanks for paying attention, and I'll see you next time.